Hello everybody, good evening. We are doing the evening live update with myself, Ranger John Stallman, Kanaka Ranger, and also Mileka Lincoln. So today, yesterday we didn't do any live because we were in Pohoiki, so we ended up going into Pohoiki in the morning, checked out the flow at Kapoho, and Kapoho, it wasn't as bad as yesterday evening and today this morning. Yesterday there was still homes still intact in Waiaupai area. There was probably on the south side there was 3 or 4, and right on Alapai Point there was about like 12 to 15 homes left. But the lava was actually surrounding that area, and then in the afternoon we seen it started to take all the homes in the Waiaupai area, and watch the flow started to flow north. But there is still active lava on Fissure 8, Fissure 9, and Fissure 24. There's just tons of gases coming out of those fissures, but nothing breaking out. But still, Fissure 8 is pretty much a dominant fissure. Multiple homes was taken today while we were there at the Kapoho ocean entry in the Kapoho area. But any updates with you?
I feel like there's so much to talk about. I think that the talk of the town tonight is probably Merlin. So for those of you who haven't seen the update or who just need a brief recap of the story, our intention when we went out into the water yesterday morning when we launched from Hilo, was to get out and assess what was happening in Kapoho Bay, because we obviously knew at that point already that lava was starting to inundate Kapoho and vacation land, and we were hearing from USGS HVO and also of course from Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency officials that it was filling the bay at this really rapid, very sort of aggressive rate, and we wanted to see what that looked like and then make our way into Pohoiki, where we knew we might potentially have to spend the night depending on conditions, and see if anyone out there might still need help, because that community got isolated so quickly without a lot of warning.
Right.
And a lot of time to evacuate. So
also we brought home Avery and Makani, who wanted to go check out their
Yes.
homes.
because we do
Pohoiki
know,
Road. Yep.
yeah, there are so many people who have lost houses. Right now, Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency officials are officially saying that it's 130 homes lost, but they also admit that their tally is behind by about 48 hours, which was why yesterday they had released notice that they estimated it was closer to 500 houses. But don't forget that for all of the homes that have been taken, there are hundreds of homes that are still standing that are just inaccessible because highways like 132 and 137 have been cut off by the lava. And so we had the opportunity to take Makani Greg and Avery back into Pohoiki to check on their home. And when we pulled up to the Pohoiki boat ramp, waiting for us with his tail wagging was Merlin. We didn't know it was Merlin at the time.
Merlin the magician.
Merlin, magical Merlin, yes. And Merlin's story is that, as you know, some people had days to prepare to evacuate and others had minutes. And in that shuffle, in sort of the critical decision-making time of what goes and what stays, Merlin got left behind in Pohoiki, and we were so happy to be able to bring him back with us this morning. And he's now in the care of a fabulous foster mama, Leslie, at Kīlauea's Bar and Grill, and she has already gotten him a bath and a haircut and an initial vet check. Merlin has hip dysplasia, he's 15 years old, and he may also have a broken hip. It appears as though he has a broken tail. They're checking to make sure that he doesn't have heartworm, but that is the concern. So Merlin is this fabulous, amazing old man who we have all totally fallen in love with. But he's going to need a lot of TLC, and so she right now is going to get him to the point of figuring out what his long-term care needs are going to be, and we will of course keep you guys posted on Merlin's journey. But aside from meeting Merlin, I think one of the things that stood out the most for me was the impact of how much Kapoho Bay has changed, not just now that there's like an 8/10 of a mile long lava delta jutting out of it, but because of the color of the ocean and the wildlife, all of the marine animals,
Marine life is horrible, man,
that have died. all of the fish and the turtles that were floating on top of the water, the way that the water has turned this dark, eerie, gray brown. It just is so void of life. It doesn't look like ocean.
Some areas was like 110, 115 degrees ocean water.
Yeah.
And you know, when we first arrived on site, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish, turtles, eels, sharks floating everywhere, and that was just heartbroken. I mean, heartbreaking for us.
Absolutely.
Being from the ocean people like us, love the ocean. Just to see all these
Especially
fish.
there, you know, we know that there hasn't been coral in Kapoho Bay ever since the 1960 flow, but there was so much fish. There was so much beautiful wildlife that had returned to the bay, and people loved snorkeling in that area and obviously spending time in the Kapoho tide pools. And so while we were there, we got word, and we pretty sure we could see it, that the tide pools were being inundated with lava.
Yeah.
That was really crazy. We're talking about a wall of lava that some have described as upwards of like 30 feet.
I would say 30 to 40 feet, going over Biopai area, especially the tide pools by Miyataki House, if you know where that is, especially where Mayor Harry Kim's house was. The wall of lava that we were seeing was at least 30 feet high, just bulldozing right over everyone's house and
devouring land, like just absolutely devouring.
And the crazy part was, this is what we observed, what I observed. So the lava would come in, take out a house, take out a subdivision, and then it stopped from going into the ocean, extending outward. Right. And then we would have houses on the left and right side, and it would stop, and it would continue on going to the left and right,
like parallel to the coast.
Yeah, it was like I have never seen that done in my life, and just to watch it, just like it's saying like this lava flow has a purpose, and it's sorry to say it, but it's crazy. I just haven't seen that in my life doing lava tours and down in Kalapana, but it's just that's what my pu'uvai said.
We also saw so much volume and just like sheer velocity of lava pouring into the water that we weren't just seeing the steam or the laze, the lava haze that was being created, which we saw billowing. There were often times, even though we were making sure that we stayed within the 1,000 safety perimeter zone that was set up by the United States Coast Guard, we would be just like overwhelmed by the power of steam, just the heat that was being released even from 1,000 feet away, that was being produced by the lava laze, and then just the impact of lava entering the ocean. But it was happening with such sheer force, such sheer energy, that in some spots it wasn't just creating the steam that was rising off the water, it was like these dark clouds of like ash and lava just being thrown up into the air, black sand just kicking upwards. We saw a lot of that. We saw actual lava streams, of course, as well. And what really took my breath away, I would say, what really just made all of it feel very real and very just heartbreaking, was we could actually see the fountaining from Fissure 8 6 miles away. And even though we couldn't see the actual lava river that we know has been very fast moving and full of volume, to be able to see the fissure that clearly from the water, how big it looked, how powerful it looked, that was crazy for me.
Yeah, to watch the fissure rage yesterday,
just rage.
And that last night was from the ocean entry. I mean, we could clearly see it from 6 to 8 miles away, and it was just raging.
I mean, an unbelievable experience. The whole thing feels very surreal. It's I've had several people now say that it feels like being in a science fiction movie, and I would say that that really felt like the case yesterday, especially when we finally docked at Pohoiki, and to see Isaac Hale Beach Park just empty, just abandoned. There was not a single person except for Merlin. That all the signs even indicating where people should be going, all you could see was fluttering police tape from where they had closed off the road, from when the closure had gotten so close. Oh,
it's Phil.
Hi guys.
Hi, Phil.
Dr. Phil.
So that felt like being in a scene of Walking Dead when we finally walked all the way down Highway 137 to where the very first lava entry had crossed right there at Malama Flats, and to stand on top of what was at least 45, 50 of lava that used to be the Malama Key State Forest Reserve, and from there to be able to look back at the Fountain Fissure 8, that was just so eerie. That's the only really way to describe it. It's like a ghost town. There were people who clearly had like left their lights on in their homes, car doors open. You could tell that people picked up and left with no indication of when they might be coming back. They thought they were. I mean, I think that that's what lights on and car doors open mean, right? People thought, okay, we'll be right back. We're leaving now in a frantic panic, but we're going to get a chance to come home. And all of those people are realizing that that might not be the case anytime soon.
Yeah, so that was kind of eerie going into Poiki and seeing just the vacant area of Poiki.
That beach park parking lot is usually packed to the brim.
So right now we have Dr. Phil. How's it going, Phil?
Hi guys.
How you doing? All right. So do you have we have Brother John too here.
John, great job, guys.
Right on, Phil. So what we've been seeing a lot in Kapoho is just the volume of lava is just overwhelming of how much lava can be flowing in towards the ocean.
Yeah, they've been saying 6 to 9 million cubic meters a day, right? It's what's flowing out there.
Whoa.
So, like, what is that in cement truck comparisons?
Does it really matter how many cement trucks it actually is, right? But one comparison we've heard is that this eruption has already put out more lava than the whole 35 years of Pu'u's eruption. That gives us some context.
600,000 per second or something, or 600,000 per minute or something like that too. That's what they were saying.
Yeah, it's a.
But I've been hearing that Fissure 8 has been looks like it's been slowing down. From our perspective, from the ocean and also from Poiki, it didn't look like it from our maybe because that the Pu'u is so huge now. Maybe because of the size of the Pu'u made it look smaller. But I'm not too sure. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to really wrap your mind around how much is coming out, right? It's just there's just we've always talked about before about how Mauna Loa has always dwarfed anything Kīlauea does, and I think we finally see Kīlauea really put it doing the max, maybe not the max, but doing more of what she's capable of doing, right? That's the really amazing thing. It's putting out Mauna Loa size flows, and I've always kind of made the analogy Mauna Loa is like an adult volcano. Really, when she erupts, it's really something to watch out for, and that's what we're seeing at Kīlauea, right? So Kīlauea is kind of coming into adulthood, so to speak. It's another way to put that analogy, right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy of what's happening now. Another thing too, we've been hearing a lot of cracks and stuff happening at Kīlauea, also on Halimau, and looks like there was an explosion around 4:10 today with a 5.6 magnitude earthquake, and I shook a bunch of people out there, and looks like it's still very much active. We've been hearing a lot of earthquakes near Kīlauea or Halimau every 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's something brewing up there.
Yeah, it's kind of more of the same. Yeah, there's actually been enough of events happening now that we're starting to see the pattern, right? And I don't take away from anything John's gonna say. I don't know what he's got prepared. I'm kind of getting my stuff together right here, but let me see if I can get let me switch my camera around and show you guys the image that Steve Brantley showed last night, I believe, at the public meeting about the number of earthquakes that appear. Let's see if I can get this to show here.
Yeah.
All right, so here's my computer screen. It's gonna look glary, sorry, but it's about a week data, right? What you see is a number of earthquakes in the dark blue. They kind of build up, and then as soon as a big explosion happens, it tails back down. Let's see if I can put my finger in here. Well, it's actually reversed, right? It's okay, here's a bunch of earthquakes, explosion happens, it drops down, then more big earthquakes building up, a whole bunch of them, and then down again after the explosion. That pattern has been pretty consistent, right? So
Right.
what we're seeing is a whole bunch of as earthquakes ramp up, you get more and more of them. Then you get something like a 5.5 size, more or less, release of energy. Not really an earthquake, an explosion, right? Clearing the vent. I think you guys have seen from
Right.
the footage how much debris is actually choking the crater of Halemaumau. So
And I seen that a picture of Halemaumau is like the whole crater floor has given way, and it's like so much rubble is actually being um, plugging up that whole crater, and look, it's just scary to me.
yeah, it's massive. The scale of what's happening up there is massive, right? I mean, we've seen that half-mile crater before. We talked about how this event could grow the crater to about that size. It looks like it might even get bigger than that half-mile by the looks of what's happening now. I mean, it's hard to say that everywhere it's cracked might actually fall in. It's at some point it kind of slumps in. There was an interesting view this morning, that I saw this morning on the drone footage. You can, like, from the Jagger Museum, it looks like you can see steps. Like, there's a upper crater, and it collapsed down another step, and down another step, and there's almost all the way down to the old pit, right? And it reminds me of something I heard of, back in the day, about how before that 24 eruption, there was something called like the 7 sacred steps of Pele. Maybe you know more about that, Ikaika, than I do, but there was a feature,
Right.
It looks like that's almost reforming itself there. You can kind of see that process in action, how it collapses more in the middle, then slightly less, and slightly less, and slightly less. So at some point when it stops, it's going to have that same kind of pattern. It's hard to say that it's not moving anymore. It's going to probably keep doing that. But when it's all said and done, we'll have a similar interesting pattern like that forms from the whole collapsing. So we've all often wondered, how the caldera forms. It's basically, we're seeing a little small version of that, at least small to start, right?
Wow. That's yeah. I know that story of the 7 sacred steps of Pele, and it looks like it's happening again. So, any news on Leilani or Leilani area?
I haven't heard much more.
From
No,
what you
maybe you
see?
can turn to John and have him present the map and all that. Yeah.
So here's John, and this is awesome to have both of these guys on one.
Wow, first time. That's awesome about the summit and Phil's description. And one thing I wanted to add about the summit is we can kind of be like, they're seeing such a clear pattern, and to the point where earlier this afternoon when they did their update about 2:30, they were saying that we are expecting it in the next few hours. So the pattern is so clear for them. So the scientists are like, wow, this is awesome, and it's causing fear that it's repeating and repeating. But it's actually, we can kind of look at that as like, wow, we're familiar with this system. We can relax because it's not likely to do something else until the pattern changes. So I don't know, hopefully the pattern is giving the scientists confidence, and that should give us confidence in the scientists too. But getting down to Leilani, what I can confirm is that 8 is still raging, and I like Ikaika's idea that number 8 might look smaller to some people because of the size of the pu'u, but USGS is reporting that it's pretty continuous, on the order of 150, 180 feet high, and it can have a lot of volume at that height. So it's still going, and the flow structure is changing now. So some of the things, if we walk down the flow today, the flow is actually a lot different than it was yesterday or the day before. So we still have a very large reservoir of lava at the top of the flow, kind of 2 areas that are really full up with lava. And these are the ones we keep worrying about, the berm, the levee breaking and swamping out. We've given you a bunch of different scenarios for that. And it's still a thing for sure, because there's such a tremendous amount of lava in there. But we can also start to think of how strong these levees are. And so on these first couple areas where the ponding is happening, we're seeing little spill outs. And that's actually adding to the levees and making them bigger, bulkier, heavier, stronger as it goes along. And so that's a positive thing. And as we work down the flow, our first thing after these reservoir areas that we're worried about breaking, we've got the outlet where it starts to rush like a river down these other channels out to Kopoho. And that's flowing nice and hot and smooth out of the channels. And the neat thing is, today I've been piecing together the story from the thermal images and stuff. So whatever lava here at the channel that was feeding into the arm of the flow down to Va'a or Wawa, appears like the lava has built up a lot more levee around here, and the main flow is retreated away from the arm that we're worried about. So the thermal images today doesn't look like any lava has been fed in there much for the past 24 hours. So there's just a little bit of leaking of lava out of the tip of the flow. That doesn't mean this isn't a dangerous flow. Leave it alone. You know, there's lava in there,
Right.
but it hasn't gotten moving and is looking like it's not got much channel branching off, not much fuel or food or however you want to describe it, you know. But what did happen over here, the thermal image yesterday, and I think this caused a lot of stir because I think there were eyewitnesses who watched it happen. One of these little breakouts at the tip of the flow found like a crack. So the airplanes were seeing like this pencil width little steaming crack. And since 2014, I think everyone's really afraid of the lava going in a crack. They're like, whoa. And so that came out and made a little straight line in the crack. And with this flow, like we're looking at a whole different flow. We know that about number 8. Maybe don't panic so much if a little bit of lava comes out and fills a crack, because the way these flows move, it doesn't really matter. It's just going to steamroll if it moves. And so the good news is for that arm headed to Wawa seems to not lava, and it hasn't moved. And don't worry about the little steaming crack. It seems to be cooling off since yesterday. And so that's good news. But that means the main channel where it comes out of these reservoir areas is rushing really fast all the way down. This is the region that it has some like islands in it. For anybody watching on USGS can see the thermal image. It wraps around some islands and it runs out this way. So we're back to the main channel again, is feeding any of the expansion, which has been real extensive at Vacation Land beach lots. So this is the current map we can say was from the information published around noon today. And so this might have had some falling out, but the point is it's coming down the main channel and spreading out in kind of any way you want to think of. And this really rapid flow that happened the other night, wrapped around and connected, that's not getting fed either. And neither is this big flow that started to head towards Cinder Road. So it's back to being in the main channel. And so this was an event when this wrapped around. And it's hard to say from the thermal how much that lava actually helped it move over there. It might have been the momentum of the other flow, but it definitely pushed that way after this connected. And I need to find him again, but one eyewitness came here to the hub who was in that gap before the flows connected, and he actually had to like find his way out, and he escaped by the Pohoiki by kayak or something. I didn't have enough time to talk to him, but the reason I'm telling this story is because when he was there and the lava finally came around to where he was, he just looked in my eyes and said he never imagined that there could be that much lava. You know, it was far beyond it that he had imagined. So when this flow came roaring around the corner, it was probably rolling boulders and tearing up trees. He said it was, I didn't get the height actually, but he, you know, I could tell it was an event. And so the reason I'm talking about this arm, even though it's not active, is because this is kind of demonstrating what can happen when levee breaks. Yeah. If a large amount of lava came out of the wrong part of this flow, especially where it's spring lava up here, it rushes. Yeah, and it might not end up being the main channel, but it did this quicker than we could have. And so that is still the risk. You know, we can't rule it out. But the reassuring thing to offer is that as this flow keeps progressing, it's always adding rock and adding little onto the berm, the levees on the outside. So in places, these levees along the main channel are now quite stable, and they're massive. We keep talking about how big they are. They're strong. They can hold in the lava. We never know if it's randomly going to fail. But the reassuring thing is a lot of places where it makes these berms and people are worried about it progressing over to their farms, which are still okay. These berms are stronger now than they were when this flow was forming. And so that can kind of reassure us that maybe it'll keep feeding lava in its same channel. But I got to balance that out by pointing out this weird dog leg because that was ferocious and it's already over. But that's the kind of worry of something that can happen. So don't approach the flow anywhere along it. You know, a lot of people have been just to try and figure out what's going on. Just stay back from number 8 because it can do anything. But that is a little as it keeps flowing, it's changing the structure of the levees. And now, you know, in some areas along the flow, that might be reducing the risk that it's going to break right there. But we have to treat the whole flow still as if it could break out and have a rush of lava. It could still break out and find some other blue lines up high from near where it's coming out of the vent. So, but
Phil, do you have something? You're showing me something up there?
Well, I was just trying to show you guys the thermal map as John was talking about it, because I know he doesn't have that map right in front of him.
The thermal map is really enlightening because it's a real image of the flow, and they piece it together with their gizmos through the helicopter flying over and over, piece it together. So that's one of our most accurate actual that's put together of the flow. So that's a really great place to go. Tells you where the hottest part of the flow is.
Can you show? Did you have the thermal cam up there? Phil, can you explain some of that thermal imagery right there?
Yeah, so now I'll just point out what John's talking about. Down over here is fissure 8, and here is the main arrow gets wider. So here's where this in this area right in here. Right, and here narrows, splits, joins. It's kind of like a braided channel through here, and then most of the flow comes off here. Here's Kapoho Crater. The branch he was talking about coming around the cone is right over here. You can see it's not quite as hot, at least not anymore. Not as much as it was in the previous image. Right, so the main flow, here it is coming up and really spreads out quite a lot right down here at the end, right? So here's, you know, you can see how much is pouring out of this channel, so it can spread out that large width over here.
Right.
Right, so that's what John was talking about. And the big hazard is, you know, see how hot this, how white it is here. It shows how hot it actually is. That's all like really liquid material right at the surface, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that's where you have the biggest amount of volume, posing the biggest risk as far as it kind of potentially breaking out of those walls, right? And to add what John was saying, it could be that the actual hazard is decreasing, right? But the risk maybe is not, hazard and risk are, kind of related things. Hazard is the aspect of nature that you can't control, and risk is how it's going to affect people, right? So if people are near there, the risk is still huge, even if the hazard is diminishing slightly, right? So that's the real issue is how it affects people, right? So yeah, so that's the map. Back to John.
Right on, man. So, so that's what's happening right now. Also, we've been hearing a lot of stuff in Leilani Estates on Fissure 8, Fissure 9 and 24. So this evening, there was just a lot of smoke, a lot of steam coming out of Fissure 9 and 24. Nothing big, no lava or no spattering. Still, Fissure 8 is the dominant fissure. A lot of still steam also and smoke coming out of like Fissure 18 and 16 and 22 and 20. So there's still some hot stuff that is happening down that side, but there's no real lava coming out of it. So
I want to add though, we're all waiting for it to. And so any of the other vents could still reactivate, so we can still think of the other vents as dangerous. Most likely it'll move to 9 or these other ones that seem to be getting more vigorous. But just, you got to be alert enough to can throw a curveball at any minute, so we don't necessarily know which fissure is going to be next if another one starts erupting.
So anybody have any?
Yeah, 1 second, let me get my headphones.
Oh, another thing too, the hub. getting a lot of we've been getting a lot of help from all over the community. All these huge corporations been helping out with us here at the hub at Puhonua Puna. So mahalo to all those guys.
Absolutely.
They said the wind is going to. Yeah. So another thing too to watch tomorrow. These next couple days we're gonna have variable winds here on the Big Island, especially on the east side. So a lot of bad winds. We might be having some lays and some SO2 sulfur dioxide. Yeah, so we'll be monitoring that here at the hub. That bad sulfur dioxide, and if it gets over 2.0 ppm, we'll be notifying everybody and evacuating the hub. So be careful, everybody. Make sure you guys have the proper mask and respirators for tomorrow because, and the next couple of days because we'll be having some bad winds in the next couple.
Yeah.
Right? How's Nanavali? So Nanavali right now, they're out of the woods right now, but if anything could happen. We could jump over to the next steepest line of descent, which runs right on the southern end of Nanavali, and that could be very bad for Nanavali. But we've been watching on that. If anything should happen, we'll be letting everybody know. But prepare anyway. Yeah, prepare to be to get evacuated in short time notice. PGV is fine right now. Nothing. There's no flows that is flowing around PGV. We get that question every day. So yeah, so PGV, there's no active flows around it right now, but who knows? It could get activated anytime. Um, yeah. So yeah.
All right, I see some questions over here. Here's one question. Why does ESGS delete some of the earthquakes off the site? Most of the way that earthquakes are generated is by computer. So as soon as something happens, the computer makes an automatic magnitude and location. If it's an important enough earthquake, the scientists will go in and review it, and then it actually can refine it, so they can actually increase or decrease the magnitude. That's what you often see, or the location, or the depth of the thing. They can change it and label it an actual explosion rather than an earthquake. So a lot of times when you see those first reports of the earthquake within the first maybe even 30 minutes or so, like you really, don't know that it was reviewed by a person. And the big ones, they especially get to right away. But you can imagine with so many thousands of earthquakes, it's impossible for them to look at every single one of them. So they basically pick and choose, right, which ones they think are the most important ones, the most relevant ones to tell the story and kind of keep tabs on what's going on. So that's why the earthquakes change and sometimes magnitude, location. Oftentimes, if you're able to click on that detail for the earthquake, it'll show if a human has reviewed it or not, or if it's computer generated, if you go into enough detail, right? So just for you guys to answer that question. One other question I saw was about difference between lava tubes and the actual rift zone. So the rift zone is where the magma is moving underground. It's about a half mile to the top of the rift zone, and it goes down to perhaps 2 miles, 2.5 miles down. That's the main path of magma that's injecting from the summit. So the rift zone is really like a structure feature of the volcano that goes kind of all the way through it. Whereas a lava tube is really a surface feature, right? It's like a river of lava that's flowing on top of the ground, and it's cooling against the air on the surface, right? If you guys who live in cold places have seen rivers freezing in the winter, ice forms in the banks, eventually it meets over the middle, but the water is still flowing underneath that ice cap. That's what a lava tube is. The difference is there's no spring, right? The rock is not going to melt and go back to liquid at some point later. It just encases itself. And for it to form the tube that we're familiar with as far as a cave, it's going to drain out somewhere, and that leaves the airspace behind eventually. So lava tubes are surface features.
Yeah. Oh, go right ahead, Phil.
Hey, Phil, I have a question for you about lava tubes. So,
okay, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Can you?
what do you think? Is it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so
just
what
cut
do you
out.
think?
Can you
is
start
it
over?
going to form lava tubes?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm wondering if you think number 8 will form lava tubes with this kind of flow rate and with this kind of complex structure of such a big flow.
It doesn't seem like it's happening very quick. Yeah. One thing that that I've heard that
That's kind of why I'm asking.
right.
I want to illustrate this to people because the flow rate that we have is so tremendous. It's staying as a wide open raging river, and you can't expect flow 8 to crust over and form the tubes and just empty nicely into the ocean. And so I just kind of wanted to get your take on whether or not we'll see that happen at 8, or any thoughts you have about that.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, there's people with the USGS who study this in much more detail than I know, so I just kind of put that caveat out there. But kind of instinctively, a couple of things jump out. One is if the flow is, let's say, 100 meters wide, right? It's going to be really hard to form a roof from edge to edge to kind of bridge that gap, right? So that makes it pretty difficult to do right away, right? So possibly if the flow starts cooling a little bit or the volume decreases enough that you can start building from the edges and that channel actually narrows, then potentially yes. If that happens, it'll probably happen when we test, right? There's areas where it's skinny and areas where it's fat. You can imagine it's not going to happen.
From Brazil.
Yeah.
There's a big difference as far as how
to help people think about the situation.
Yeah, the sound, you guys, if it's kind of cutting in and out or whatever. But so the second thing that comes to mind is with outflows, it seems to be a little more difficult to form lava tubes. Just the nature of the flow itself, right? It's not forming a nice like shell as easily. It's kind of a rubble over top of the thing. So that's the other thing that would make me think that this flow anytime real soon. Possibly as the flow rate dwindles and eruption kind of tails off, that maybe it could happen.
Down the river. Yep.
Yeah.
So things might need to change before we saw.
Yeah, so, other than that, yeah, I am very tired. We are both very tired. So we'll be doing another update tomorrow, Phil. You'll be ready now.
I'll try. Yeah, I gotta go on the ocean tomorrow too, so I'll see if I get reception.
Ending of our update today.
As always, we ask you to take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Malama pono, aloha, ahuha.
And yours.
I hear you guys.
Everybody together. Stay classy, Puna.
Stay classy, Puna.
Aloha.